All right, everybody, it's the Combatcast, and we're going to be previewing UFC 297 this week. Before that, we're going to talk about the main event, co-main event from this past weekend's fight night. In particular, we'll have some discussion about Jim Miller and maybe what's going to happen at UFC 300. But before that, Chevy, tell people what we got coming up.
All right, no UFC fights next weekend, but there is a one championship card, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. I am looking out for a MMA Jeopardy possibly that we haven't done that is current, so we'll bring that together. And then back to the fights, February 3rd, UFC Fight Night Dolides versus Imavov. And then February 10th, UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Pfeiffer. I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
All right, some good fights coming up. And yeah, we are just coming out of this weekend too. Let's talk about it. Jim Miller was on this past weekend's fight night. He was in the co-main event. And we're going to combine these segments here. UFC 300, Jim Miller, because we like Jim Miller here, and we're talking about potential opponents. But let's talk about Jim Miller's performance this past weekend.
Yeah, so he showed that the old dog's still ready to go. He brought it to Gabriel. It was pretty good back and forth for a while, and then Jim ended up with the third round face crank. Couldn't get the arm under the chin, but it didn't matter. He got the finish, so love to see it. Love Jim. Everyone loves Jim. He called out Paul Felder, who was ringside. And he also called out Matt Brown. And Matt Brown accepted on Twitter. Paul Felder, in the post-fight press conference thing, said that, he hasn't determined anything to come back, but he's definitely interested in that. He wants to get in the gym, see how his body feels, but he thinks that would be a great way for both of them to go out. Personally, I love both guys, all three guys. Matt Brown does fight at 170, so right. I assume Jim would have to go up. But Felder and Miller is a great fight. Both guys could fight, retire, and get their flowers, get a little video package kind of deal. That's a good UFC 300 fight.
Yeah, I mean, even the Matt Brown one, too. I mean, Matt can retire at any time. He's kind of been inactive here and there. Like, he'll take a fight, bounce around. But I think I'm with you. All those fights sound great. Like you too, I think Matt a little bigger, fighting at that 170 mark. I know, but Jim's getting up there in his career, so taking a fight after a few months, he might want to, put on a little weight or something. But yeah, I like both those fights. I think I favor him against Felder right now, only because Felder's inactivity. And I wouldn't know what to expect with Paul, even though I know Paul keeps himself in great shape. But I think I'd just lean towards Jim just because of the inactivity. With the Matt Brown, I think the size would be a problem, though. I think that Matt, fighting at that weight, and he's such a, Matt's a knockout guy, with those elbows and everything. But I would knock out Jim Miller out of any fight. He could submit you. Did you hear this, by the way? This is totally random. I don't give a shit. We're going to talk about this on Michael Bisping and Anthony Smith's podcast.
Yeah, he also called out Brock in his post-fight.
Well, there's a story behind that, right? Because Anthony Smith said that, he thinks that Jim Miller had a 50-50 shot of tapping out Brock Lesnar in the octagon. And Michael Bisping was like, listen, he's like, yeah, so I couldn't get tapped out, sure, but like, who do you think's winning in a street fight? And Anthony Smith's like, oh, definitely Jim Miller. And Michael Bisping's like, have you lost your mind? And so Jim was very different. He was like, he appreciated it. He's like, I'd definitely be very nervous. He said, but I'd hope I'd be getting paid very well. So
Brock is not a human being, so
no, I would not want Jim to have that fight ever. Let's get to the main event of this past weekend's fight night before we get to UFC 297.
Yeah. So just also we should point out that Manel Kopp versus Matthias Nicolau, that was supposed to be the co-main event, but Cape Kopp, he's unprofessional and a shit talker, so he missed weight by 3.5 pounds, I believe. So, like, were you even trying to make weight at that point? He's a piece of shit. He's got to be one of the most unlikable fighters. And I thought this before the whole Kai Kara France and Izzy thing too, but he's got to be one of the most unlikable fighters in the sport, not in the UFC, in the sport. He's just terrible. So, hopefully he gets fucking pummeled in his next fight, whoever he fights. Hopefully the UFC punishes him. Anyway, yeah, let's move on to the main event. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker as a title eliminator fight.
So I didn't see any of this. I was busy. I just saw Magomed got the knockout, and I did not see that coming. So what happened?
Yeah, apparently Ankalaev is sick of people like myself calling him boring. So he went out there. He made some reads on Johnny in the first round, and then came out with pressure in the second round, and landed a nice right hook on Johnny, and then followed up with a nose-shattering uppercut while he was down. Johnny only gets KO'd like a cartoon character in typical Johnny Walker fashion. So he was doing well in the first round. He landed a few things here and there. But once Magomed landed, he immediately got Johnny's respect. And obviously we understand why with how the fight ended. But he just kind of shelled up and couldn't get anything off. So Magomed has said that he's not going to wrestle Pereira at all. He's going to go right at him. He wants to get after him in a stand-up fight like he did with Johnny. So, I mean, that makes the fight more interesting for sure, because if he just takes Alex down, he should dominate him.
Yeah. I mean, he probably wants this title shot, so he'll do whatever it takes. So if he's got to put on some knockouts, yeah, I mean, good for him. I mean, it definitely makes the fight more interesting. I don't know, if that's just something you get the knockout, you try to capitalize, you say that, and then you're like, I'm not doing that fucking Pereira, and then you wrestle.
He has knockouts. He just hasn't really showcased them a lot recently,
Yeah. Well, the competition gets stiffer the more you move on to, So whatever the case, he deserves a shot at Pereira too. I mean, Jamal Hill, if is ready to go.
A long ways off, I think.
Yeah, well, then maybe do Pereira then too, Yeah. So, but all right, so that was this weekend. Out with the old, in with the new UFC 297 this weekend, and we're gonna preview the main card. Before we do that, Chevy, are there any other fights on this card that you took note of?
Yeah, Jillian Robertson versus Polyana Viana. That's a good matchup. And then Charles Jourdain versus Sean Woodson. I love anytime Charles Jourdain fights, but Woodson is a good matchup for him, has good boxing. I think that'll be a very good fight. So keep an eye out for those. But on to the main event, which is a pretty good main event. Let's start off with Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev. I like that I always give these ones to you now to start. 17-0. He's got 3 KOs, 4 subs, 10 decisions against Arnold Allen. 19-2, 7 KOs, 4 subs, 8 decisions. He was on a 12-fight win streak before losing to Max Holloway by decision. Not an easy booking to come back to, right? I mean, you lose your first one to Max Holloway, and now you got the undefeated Evloev here. Evloev, like 4 subs, 3 KOs, 10 decisions. That says to me like he can get it done anywhere. He's not particularly probably a big banger, but he's probably just a guy that's going to go wherever the fight goes. Arnold Allen's that guy as well. I think I'm going to go with Arnold Allen, just actually on the strength of that loss to Max Holloway, because Max is one of the all-time greats. And being able to go 5 rounds with Max Holloway and have some moments, to me, that says a lot. Not that Evloev can't get this win at all. I'm not saying that, but just going to strength of schedule. I'm going to go with Arnold Allen here a little bit. But since Evloev is undefeated, I'm not going to go for a finish here. I'll say this is a decision. Arnold Allen gets it done 3 rounds. Yeah, like you said, UFC's not doing Arnold any favors after that Max loss. I do think Arnold has the skills to get the win, but he needs to bring his absolute best. Obviously, he had a loss before he got to the UFC, and then you rattle off 12 straight UFC wins. So he has that mentality to come back from a loss like that. Hopefully the last fight recharged him and we get that best of the best of Arnold Allen. But if not, I would bet that Movsar, pops out a few punches here and there and then shoots for takedowns over and over again. That's where he will have the advantage for sure. I think Arnold can get up when he gets taken down, but those takedowns are just going to keep coming and coming and coming. So unless he can clip him and knock him out, I'm going to take Evloev by decision. Unfortunate, because I am a huge Arnold Allen fan, as we've discussed many times on this. So I'm hoping you're right, but my brain.
I guess I'm seeing him maybe being able to prevent that takedown, but that's going to probably be the key. Right.
I think he's stopped a few of them, but they just keep coming and coming and coming.
Yeah. We'll see. See what happens. Next fight.
Right. Let's move on to Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault.
All right. Marc-Andre, 16-6-1, 10 KOs, 1 subs, 5 decision. Chris Curtis, 30-10-1, 17 KOs, 1 subs, 12 decisions. Curtis was on fire when he first came to UFC, getting some quick finishes and was looking really good. Then he lost a couple, and then he had a no contest recently. I think he wants to get back in this winners column here. And, you're talking about, a guy who trains with Sean Strickland. They have that mentality. A loss here that does not deter these guys. I like Curtis here. I think this is going to be a fun fight. I think Curtis is going to get it done, and I think he'll get it done with a second-round TKO.
Yeah, I'm with you. Barriault has looked good in his last few fights while Chris has struggled. I'd also give Barriault the power advantage, but I'm picking Chris as well. I like you. I think working in that room with the current champ every day has got to give you a certain confidence, knowing that you can beat the best in your division for sure. I think Chris uses technical boxing and volume to get that round 2 TKO that you were talking about.
All right, there we go.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Neil Magny versus Mike Malott.
All right, Mike Malott is 10-1-1, 4 KOs, 6 subs. This man does not like to go the distance. All right, Neil Magny. Neil Magny does not mind going the distance. He's 28-11, 7 KOs, 4 subs, 17 decisions. He's got the most wins in welterweight history. This is a guy that he's tied Roger and Kevin Holland for most wins in a calendar year. I think it was 5 in 2014. So, he's a guy that's a volume guy. He's a guy that's always ready to fight. He's always improving. He's coming off a tough loss to Ian Gary there that did not go well. So I think, again, almost like Curtis, I think this is going to be a fight where Magny steps up. But I don't know.
Magny also gets better as the fight goes on, I think.
Yeah.
Cardio that he has too.
So it's going to have to go to decision, I think. So I'll go Magny by decision.
Yeah, Neil's a legend for sure, but he struggled against the recent up-and-comers, like Ian Gary and such. But that paired with his struggle versus high-level submission grapplers makes this a bad matchup for him, I think. So I think Mike can get him down eventually, although it's going to be very difficult. Neil has good takedown defense. He's tenacious in that aspect. But when Mike can get him down, if he has at least 2 minutes left, guaranteed he works for a submission. And I think he'll get it. I'll say round 3. Takes him until the end, but I think he gets a submission win over legend Neil Magny.
All right.
Breaks that top 15, because right now I think he's outside the top 15. So, all right, co-main event, Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva for the bantamweight belt.
All right, for the vacant bantamweight champion. One of these girls is going to walk out with a bantamweight title. Silva, she's won 3 out of her last 4. She technically had won her last 4 against Holly Holm too, but that got overturned to a no contest for some kind of banned substance that was found in her blood. But overall, Silva is. Sorry here. Come on, people. Sorry, technical difficulties. All right, she's overall 10-2, 1-1, 1 KO, 7 subs, 2 decisions. So she's won most of her fights. So going into this, and now Raquel Pennington, don't let the record fool you, 15-8. We used to like to joke she's the Mark Hunt of the women's division. She's very deceptive. She's one of those people who took on just like every tough fight and really grew as time went on. She's on a win streak right now. Well, first off, she's got 1 KO, 4 subs, 10 decisions, and she's won 5 in a row going into this, and just going back here too, Raquel Pennington, just look at some of the people Raquel has fought in her career. Caitlin Vienna recently, Aspen Ladd, Macy Chazon, and then going back to the Holly Holmes, Doreen Duranamines, Jessica Andrade. Like, she's fought every top opponent you could fight. And she's on that 5-fight win streak. Now, I think she's at a point in her career where she's very capable of winning this fight. That being said, I like Silva. She won that last fight, even though it got ruled to a no contest. And understandably why, if there was a banned substance there. But I have to judge what I saw in that last fight. And I thought she looked really good. So I'm going to go with Silva. I think it's a durable fight, but I think it's a round 4 submission.
Yeah, like you mentioned, both fighters quietly putting together a good winning streak. Mayra has been getting finishes, but Raquel has fought the tougher opponents for sure. Like you said, the competition that she's fought is very high level, the highest in the division for sure. So just based on that, I think, and plus her durability, I'm going to pick Raquel by TKO in round 4. I think that Mayra gets tired out a bit, struggling to get the finish, and Raquel capitalizes. All right, let's move on to this main event, which is what we all really want to see. Sean Strickland versus Driscus Du Plessis for the middleweight belt.
All right, main event time here. Du Plessis is 20-2, 9 KOs, 10 subs, 1 decision, undefeated in the UFC, coming off his biggest victory ever over Robert Whittaker, a finish, and Sean Strickland, 28-5, 11 KOs, 4 subs, 10 decision, coming off his biggest victory ever as he won the middleweight championship in an upset over Israel Adesanya. Man, both these guys have a ton of momentum going to this fight. So I think the confidence is going to be there for both guys, which is great. It ought to be a real interesting fight then. I don't think either guy fears the other striking. So I'm very curious to see what we get here. Strickland's been a really great story in terms of what he could do that nobody expected him to pull that victory off, That being said, hey, who am I? I'm just a fan. But as a fan who watches this stuff, it's hard to watch somebody go from where he was and just be champion all of a sudden and not wonder, okay, like how good are they, right? And Du Plessis knocking out Robert Whittaker and just a lot of the momentum he had coming into this. I mean, let's look at some past opponents here by Du Plessis real quick here. Derek Brunson, Darren Till, Brad Tavares. So, he's had a lot of good contenders too on his way up here. And actually, some of those guys, like, even Derek, I would have been surprised if they beat Strickland, if they had a fight. They didn't, but you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's me not respecting Strickland enough. I don't know. But I feel like Du Plessis is going to win the championship here, is what I'm really trying to get at. And I think he'll do it with a finish, round 3 or 4. I'll pick 4, TKO.
Yeah, I think Driscus could certainly catch Sean early like Alex did, and KO him. But and I know that Driscus got his nose fixed and he beat Robert Whittaker, but I'm still not convinced about his cardio. And we know that Sean is going to pressure him for sure. He's going to push the pace. He trained with Alex after he got knocked out by Alex. So I think he's going to try to fight Alex the same, or I'm sorry, I think he's going to try to fight Driscus the same way that he fought Alex, but hopefully a little bit smarter with this head movement and such. So I think with volume and pressure, I'm going to pick Sean. Round 3 TKO. I think he just puts so much pressure on him that Driscus wilts. Not convinced by his cardio, like I said, and then Sean pours it on for the finish.
Well, I think you make an excellent point. In fact, the cardio is going to be an interesting play. You're right with the pressure of Sean Strickland. So I'm going to change my pick a little bit. I'm going to go to Du Plessis still, but a little earlier because I think he's going to have to probably get it done earlier after really thinking about that. And I'm going to still go round 3. I'm going to say he gets it because I think Strickland's going to be out, but I'm going to say he's at the best shape of his career because this is a title fight and he needs to be in the best shape of his career. And I'll say he gets it done with TKO, but not going to be surprised either way. I think this is a very good matchup in the sense in terms of like where both guys are at, rather than getting the Adesanya rematch or something like that. We're watching like two of the best contender fight the champion. And again, just because of their particular rises, like for DDP, like he rose to the top kind of quickly. And Strickland, it wasn't quickly, but it was like almost out of nowhere when we just kind of looked at him like he was going to be this middle guy, and now he's the champ. So I'm very curious just to see how this plays out.
There's also, I'm not sure what the odds are. That's a good question, but also we should note the emotional factor. Like, is Sean going to be able to, because, Driscus said the thing about his father or whatever, he's going to beat him worse than his father ever did. And then, obviously we had the incident in the crowd between them after that. And Sean was saying that he tried to bite him because he couldn't land enough damage on him. So he was so enraged that he tried to bite him. So can he, channel that properly and keep composed when the time comes to actually get in the octagon? That's an X factor for sure. But I'm going to stick with my pick. I'm going to say Sean goes into his serial killer mode. He's cold, calm, collected, until he wilts, and then he pours it on, gets the finish.
Does have a hell of a team behind him to get him in that mode too. So DDP is an interesting one to me too, because like I always thought until his recent altercations with Sean Strickland, I always thought he was a pretty nice guy. Like even the stuff with Adesanya, like he wasn't the one I thought as brash, at least in the things I watched. But then with the stuff with Strickland, it's like, oh, this is kind of low.
Yeah, he's shitty and also just dumb. Like to say like, just to like say that he's the only real African, like because he trains in Africa. Like
I didn't say that. Yeah,
you had to know that wasn't gonna, that wasn't gonna go well for you. So I think he's just kind of a bimbo, dumb kind of guy, but the guy can fight. He's also very unorthodox too. So both guys are.
Yeah,
so it's hard to train for either one. So it really is a toss up on what we're
fascinating fight.
Yeah, very interesting. Looking forward to it.
All right, let's tell people what we got coming up one more time.
All right, next week we're gonna play some MMA Jeopardy. We're gonna talk about some one championship. We got Sage Northcutt, Gary Tonin, Aoki, all on that card. So we'll talk about the guys we do know. And then February 3rd, UFC Fight Night, Dolides versus Imavov, from the Apex. Also, talk about that for a second too. February 10th, UFC Fight Night, Hermanson versus Pfeiffer from the Apex. Again, I know you didn't watch this last card, but I am getting a little bit sick of watching fights at the Apex for sure. With about 30 people in the crowd, it definitely seems like low energy. There was one point where I can't remember the guy's name. I believe he made his UFC debut. He took a 4-minute walkout, just very, very slowly walking out to the cage, and there's no fans there, so there's like 5 people cheering. It's the atmosphere is terrible. It's didn't used to bother me. I like being able to hear the corners, instructions, and stuff like that. The sounds of, the slaps from the limbs hitting each other or whatever. But I'm over it now. I'm ready to have real crowds back. UFC trying to save some money or whatever, keep the train rolling. But
I think it's, I heard somebody respond that it's created kind of a tier system almost, where they said it fondly. They didn't mind it because there's so much stuff. They said they just don't watch all the stuff anymore, but you kind of know what to expect. If it's an Apex fight night card, you're generally going to get either a lot of up-and-comers, and it's going to be a fight night card that's not going to have the most name recognition for the most part. And then you have your fight night cards with crowds, which will have, some more compelling matchups. And then your pay-per-views obviously should have, the majority of times will have the title fights, with the exception of obviously the UFC fight night we had in Mexico for Mexican Independence Day. Yeah. But I see your point. The counterpoint to that guy is like, if you're a fan, you're watching everything, it can get a burnout and you want to watch some of the best, and some of the best is the crowd, that atmosphere. You like having people reacting. It's why the UK shows are always so fun.
Right. And I also I feel bad for the fighters. Like Jim Miller fought in front of fucking 10 people. He's a goddamn legend.
Yeah.
Andrei Arlovsky fought in front of 10 people. Give me a break. Show some respect to these guys. Just because you have a few people that pay $1,600 for a seat or whatever. I understand, but I don't like it.
Yeah, I think that might be a little off-putting too. Is that it's almost like just no one's going to the Apex crowd unless you're very wealthy to have these exclusive
or you're
fights.
Friends with Dana White, or you're a Nelk boy, or some fucking loser influencer or some shit.
There you have it. Shout out to the Nelk boys. All right, guys.
Nelk boys.
Thank you for tuning in to Combatcast. Check out UFC 297 this week, and we'll also be talking about some of those fights next week as well. So we might have a full episode. So, all right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see